Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the last technical workshop of the day. My name is Giuseppe Scanapico. I work in the EASA drone section as a project manager for the regulatory development of drones operating in the certified category. Today, I will be the presence on stage assisting the moderation of this panel because the person that was supposed to be with us today moderating this panel unfortunately could not join with us in presence in Amsterdam. But as you know, the topic, the title of this conference is Amsterdam Drone Week Hybrid, and we will have a hybrid event. So we will have Sascha SCHOTT from that will be connecting from home and will be opening the workshop, and I will assist here on stage, moderating the questions and walking you through the whole event. Do we have already Sascha connected from home? Can we? Good. And let's see the beauty of technology. Hi, Sascha. Good afternoon. Can you hear us? Good afternoon, Sascha. Can you hear us? You need to open the mic. Huh? Okay, we are trying to sort out the technical problem. Beauty of being live. Hold on. It worked before, so it has to work now as well.
So let us see if this works better.
Yes, can you hear me? Can
you give me a signal if you can hear me, please?
Sascha, yes, I can hear you, but I don't think you can hear us yet. Sascha, test. Do you hear us?
Yes. Yes, I hear you. I hear you.
Good.
I hear you.
Copy that.
We hear you as well, Sascha.
We hear you loud and clear. 5 out of 5.
Okay.
So I will give the floor to you. You can start.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, then let's hit the road. Apologies for this. Very warm welcome to the Ops panel, one of the last sessions that we are presenting to you as part of our show this year. I'm connecting from home, as you see, without a doubt, and that has a very simple reason, and that is I'm having COVID. So I was unable to join you in Amsterdam, although I would have very much liked to after 2 years of confinement, as you can imagine. Still, I have managed, luckily, to recruit at very short notice one of my best skills co-pilot by means of Mr. Giuseppe Scanapico, who's with you on the stage. And I would like to introduce quite a lineup of panel members that we've been able to put together for this round of operational rules. Before I do so, let us remind what this panel is all about. We're talking about air operations rules, and a key enabler for operations of unmanned aircraft systems and crewed eVTOLs or VTOLs will be operational rules made to suit these new aviation entrants, including for operations in urban environments. For that purpose, a multidisciplinary working group assisted EASA in developing a new Annex 9 on innovative air mobility, also known now commonly as Part-IAM. That will be a new chapter to Regulation 965 of 2012 on air operations. And this panel here is intended to explore and to discuss which were the most difficult nuts that needed to be cracked. I would like to introduce Irina Petrova to you as one of the first members of our panels here. For the last 15 years, Irina has been working for the safety of air operations. And initially, she was doing that for the CAA of Bulgaria, and then for the European Commission. And now she's with EASA. And at EASA, Irina is in the lead of that multidisciplinary working group, whose task is the development of the first regulatory framework for innovative air mobility, including the operations of unmanned aircraft systems and VTOL aircraft in urban areas. Also on the stage with you is Thierry VANDENDORPE. Thierry is a rulemaking and regulations manager at AIRBUS Helicopters. In this function, he is responsible for the oversight and development of regulatory matters in the field of initial airworthiness and flight operations. And then we have Giancarlo BUONO. Captain BUONO is the Director of Safety and Flight Operations for Europe at the International Air Transport Association, IATA, and is responsible for the delivery of the IATA Safety and Flight Operations Strategy in Europe and for the liaison with European regulators, the European Commission, and EASA on issues relating to air transport safety and flight operations. Last not least on this round, and maybe some of you have already seen him performing just a couple of minutes ago, Rob AKRON-PUNSELIE. Rob is Vice Chairman of Einigung Cockpit, and it has a work group which is on unmanned aircraft systems, and he represents the European Cockpit Association to EASA in matters of unmanned aircraft regulations. He's a project engineer in the aerospace sector and a qualified pilot in helicopters, airplanes, and remotely piloted aircraft. So, with this introduction, I would like to hand the floor back to my dear co-pilot. I'm your remote pilot. So the first time we actually practice in a way this concept, yes. The remote pilot in command, by the way, which gave us quite some food for consideration in EASA. As you can imagine, during the course of our work, I'm pretty sure that the panel, including Irina, will allude to this aspect. And I would like, with this introduction, to hand the floor over to the onboard pilot who is with you on the stage, Giuseppe Scanapico. Giuseppe, please, your floor.
Thank you very much, Sascha, for the introduction. It's good that you already introduced all our guests today. As the event is hybrid, we give the opportunity to everybody to contribute to questions by using Slido. You can go on slido.com, and when you're prompted, you can use the hashtag 894527, and you will be prompted to the landing page of the event where you can submit the questions that will be then addressed by the panelists here. I think we can start with the first one. And in my notes, I see that Thierry is the first one. Please, Thierry.
Yes, thank you.
And Thierry will give us the views of the industry.
So I guess if
you can just green to go forward, red to go back.
Okay, so I have prepared some few slides just to introduce the topics, and as I am coming from a helicopter manufacturer, I will drive you through the consideration about what are the main differences between helicopters and VTOL in terms of air operation regulations. So, and I limit the scope to air taxi. As you know, helicopters have also, in common with eVTOL, the capability to vertical takeoff and landing. This picture will show you the way it is today in the current rules. So the proportionality is very important when we talk about operating regulation, because this will enable safe, still proportionate requirements to apply to the different categories of aircraft and operations. So today we have the main differentiating factors are the size of the helicopters. Here you see the smaller one. We on the normal category, let's say a Part 27 CS27, that is to say less than 7,000 pounds. They are considered, as per the definition of EASA, other than complex. The complex one, so they are basically the CS29. And you see in the regulation differences about the requirements corresponding to these criteria. More important is the distinction made between commercial air transport and non-commercial operations. So you see here the scale, the requirements are getting more stringent in terms of procedures and limitations and design requirements as well. Once you go to the top right corner, which are our subject of interest, flying over congested area, right now as we speak, twin engine helicopters category A only can fly in this kind of environment. So this drives us to the consideration in the group and what do we need for eVTOL when considering the existing regulation. Actually, we have considered the fact that most of the eVTOL, they share in common new technologies that they are taking on board, and not the most important ones are highlighted here. And I took the example of our CT Airbus, but they are shared characteristics with most of the products that are put forward today. So we have distributed electrical propulsion, we have new materials, but also advanced avionics, growing automation. So this technology have enabled us to simplify the flight operation framework in a sense that the proportionality is based on a more, I would say, concise set of criteria, and you will basically find that the operation over urban areas, which are on the right corner here, will be requested to be conducted exclusively with eVTOL that do comply with the special condition VTOL from EASA, category enhanced. And based on that, I would say overreaching requirements, they will be allowed to when complying, to fly in this kind of area. We do not foresee right now heavier than 7,000 pounds aircraft, 9 passengers. So this is the scope of the current present EASA special condition. Who knows what will come in the future, but this is what we are covering today. For the other UAM operation over non-urban area, they will have to comply with less stringent requirements of the category basic, hence they will be subject to a different set of operating regulation. And last but not least, there is no difference made between commercial and non-commercial. It has not been judged necessary to introduce this additional complexity. So as a summary, and I finished just this short introduction, I will hand over to the other panel member. This gives you a fragrance of what we have tried to put forward, that is a more simple, a more straightforward organization of the flight operation regulation. And of course, this is just one view, and we will explore the different aspects, I hope, together during this panel. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Thierry. We can then go to the second keynote speaker. It's Rob.
Oh. Thank you. So one's forward. Very good. Just to make a small correction so I don't get in trouble with head offices later. I'm vice chairman of the working group UAS Plus of Vereinigung Cockpit, which is the German arm, where the chairman of the German arm is also the chairman of the same working group under European Cockpit Association. But here, basically, I've got two very simple slides, which I wanted to put up as our background to come in. First of all, what are we? European Cockpit Association is an association representing the interests of about 40,000 plus pilots all across Europe, commercial pilots. This includes helicopter pilots, VIP operators, airline pilots, and flight engineers, incidentally, still as well. We don't only represent their interests at the international and regulatory level, but we also offer our expertise in working groups such as these to help guide the regulators in areas that we deem relevant to us. So many of our members and active members, participatory members, are dual qualified engineers, pilots. We've got medical professionals, lawyers who happen to fly airplanes during the week as well. And so we try to bring that together and offer this expertise on panels such as these to work with the industry. I took on this first slide a few excerpts of some of the position papers that European Cockpit Association has published. And what I'm trying to highlight here is really that as a pilots association, we are aware of this new incoming sector of the industry. We as the incumbent are not working against the industry as such, and we are very much working together with the regulators to ensure a safe integration of this new sector of the industry. And we worked very hard over the last few years to build the trust both with new manufacturers and the regulators to make sure that we were allowed to actually work on these rulemaking task forces to hopefully create a productive environment. So for persons who are interested in looking up what we do, who we are, and if you want to interact with us, offer us help, or request any information from us, the next slide effectively tells you where you can find that information, eurocockpit.be. Our position papers can be found there specifically to UAS+. Just do a search in that area and you will find our specific position papers where we have our opinions on these matters, which we've been publishing now for a number of years already. Specifically important to us are matters, for example, of flight crew licensing, which you may have heard in the previous panel, but also safe integration into air operations. We have opinions on specific, SORA applications, but also on the concepts of automation and autonomy, and for example, what it means to be a pilot. Who is a pilot? At what stage does the automation become so significant that we might have to change the designation of what is a pilot or a commander? And for this, we would review or refer to the automotive industry, who have a lot of experience in that area. So we tend to refer to the Society of Automotive Engineers for their levels of automation to help us classify when a pilot is in command and when the system becomes more in control. We'll move on to the next set of speakers.
Thank you, Rob, for introducing this topic, which was for sure will give us quite some headache in the near future to come up with the appropriate regulations for it. Now we move on to the views of IATA, and we have Giancarlo. Please, Giancarlo.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have just questions for you, no answers, unfortunately. And you may ask yourself, why is a representative of the airlines discussing about drones, since you're not planning to operate drones anytime soon, at least for the time being? Well, I think we have an interest. We are the ones that will need to share, to a certain extent, the airspace with the new entrants, which we're looking forward to do. We have an interest in maintaining the highest level of safety in aviation, of course, for the sake of our business and of our passengers. And by the way, we're also the one maintaining the ATM system financially at the moment, so I think we have a right to say what we think. When I hear all of that has been said in these 2 days, it's really interesting. As a pilot, I'm learning so much. But it also looks to me that we are trying to squeeze something completely new into a framework which was not designed, neither thought, for something like this. To make a practical example, it looks to me like, for the ones of you that do remember what a Commodore 64 is, you're trying to put the software of a new Mac into a Commodore 64 and hope for the best. Well, is it going to work? I don't know. I'm not sure it will. So we still rely very much on VFR, IFR. How did we get here? By trial and error. We lost a lot of people, unfortunately. And we learned a lot. But are these new systems squeezable into a VFR, IFR way of operating, for example, in the airspace? I mean, IFR has been developing gradually, step by step. Don't forget that not long time ago, we were still flying with airways that were basically based on radio signals. And even today, where we think we have, beautiful technology, yes, we have the satellites. If you look what is happening nowadays with regards to GPS jamming, for example, or spoofing, we very much rely on technologies from the 60s for commercial aviation. We have inertial reference systems. And now we are trying to bring into all of these something completely new, with new technology and new way of operating, new way of managing air traffic. And of course, we need regulations. And we are very lucky in Europe that we have EASA that, in fact, it's very advanced in issuing regulation. And they are, our best partners in terms of safety. However, I disagree slightly from something that was said during a panel this morning, which is, we need regulation if we want to be safe. Yes, we need regulation, but there's not enough. Because if you comply 100% with the regulation, you're not safe. You are legal. It's different, okay? You need more to be safe. What do you need more? You need culture. You need a safety culture that is not something that you build in a day. In the industry, we built it in 100 years with trial and error. And we need to make sure that there is some transfer of the safety culture into what we are going to do, considering we will have new type of operations, new type of people. There will be some transfer of knowledge and skills, but we need to make sure that it's enough, both where we think about licensing, for example, but also where we think about operations. So last but not least, as I mentioned, the air traffic environment, I think that segregation is not the answer. We need more integration. In the end, the scope of operation that we expect from drones is such that it will be impossible to keep them completely separated from the rest of the traffic. Therefore, we need to make sure that we think ahead and we rethink gradually the ATM system so that we can actually integrate traffic. Very last thing that I just remember. Somebody said in the panel before, well, I think it was an EASA colleague, we may want to look at regional solutions for certain licenses. From an industry perspective, think twice for what you're wishing for, because you may think that because you're just operating in a certain urban environment, you don't want to integrate globally. Well, the first crisis you will have with not finding enough pilots, the first time you will need to certify a new aircraft and countries are asking for 10 different types of certification, you won't be very happy, because this will cost you a fortune. I don't think it will fit with your business model. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo. And I think we can go to our regulatory officer, Irina. That she will give us an overview of the upcoming content of the Future Ops Regulation, which is going to be published, as you know, in the next few weeks for consultation and request for feedback from the public.
Thank you, Giuseppe. It's my honor to be here today with you as a speaker and be able to talk you through our work on certified category, on integration of certified category into the transport system. So I will first try to deal with how we address certified category operations in our work. So this is a lot of text, but I did it on purpose. This is for you, for your records, for your references. First of all, I would like to start with the fact that in 2019, EASA set up a working group. It's a working group which is composed of around 25 experts with various backgrounds, and they come from different areas. I just want to check with my notes here, not to forget somebody. So we have member states like Austria, Germany, France, Spain. Italy will join soon. Also, we have industry stakeholders like Amazon, Airbus, Helicopters, Lilium, Volocopter, ADAC, DACH, and Leonardo will join soon. And professional associations like ECA, Rob is on our group, like IATA. We have Manfred, but I haven't heard from him lately. And last but not least, we have EDA, DG Move, and EASA in the lead of this group tasked with the development of implementing rules and acceptable means of compliance. For those who didn't follow previous discussions or previous workshops, I would like to explain what certified category means to us. This certified category covers high-risk UAS for which SORA is not applicable, as well as VTOL operations, VTOL-capable aircraft operations, which can be manned or unmanned. So we have this very complex thing to cover under the roof of Part-IAM. What is Part-IAM? Many people mentioned this previously, but I want to introduce you to the concept. There were lots of discussions about this concept, which accommodates aircraft designs and system technologies which are new, which do not fall necessarily under the known aircraft categories, which have VTOL capabilities for takeoff and landing, which have specific distributed electric propulsion, and last but not least, can be operated as manned or as unmanned. Actually, we know that already now that the manufacturers are preparing their aircraft for unmanned operation, although the pilot on board is a safety mitigation. For us, IAM, or innovative air mobility, if you wish, is another type of operation. It comes along with the other types, the known ones, Part-CAT or CAT operations. You maybe know about NCC operations, which is non-commercial complex operations. You may know about NCO operations. These are non-commercial, non-complex operations. SPO are specialized operations. And now we have this additional, a new animal, which is a new part, a new type of operation. And this new type of operation deserves a new annex. And this is how we decided to address and to integrate this new technology and new type of operations into the existing system. IAM includes operations in urban, so congested urban environments, as well as outside these areas. It includes also, I mentioned already about VTOL operations, but VTOL can be for passengers operations, also for other type of operation like cargo operations, and also we have UAS for small cargo deliveries in the cities. So this is under the same roof. I here I heard somebody from my colleagues mention, Thierry mentioned that commercial, non-commercial, this opposition is no longer valid here. And it's a very important advancement, I would say. We don't rely on this for the safety risk mitigation anymore. There are new lines of, new division lines, if you wish, which are based on the risk. And these are enhanced category against, or not against, but versus basic category. So you know already maybe that these are types of certification standards under eVTOL. Another line of another division line is UAM versus NAM. UAM is urban, NAM is non-urban. Also, we have manned versus unmanned, another line of two where the risk is considered should be addressed properly. We moved forward in addressing these operations. We got out of the box, Giancarlo. We found a dot somewhere out of the box when crossing the lines. It was not easy because on some things we started from scratch. We didn't know what to do in the beginning. What else I want to say about Part-IAM? We want to be outcome-based, not to specify too much or too many things. And we don't want to be technology specific. On the contrary, we want to be technology agnostic in our work. And also we were doing a lot of coordination with other developments, like in the area of vertiports, in the area of flight crew licensing, airworthiness certification, and airspace requirements. So all this was part of our job, not only developing our own rules, but also trying to constantly check what the others are doing in this area. So what the right side of the slide is a few principles which we followed during the development of the rules. And I would like to highlight the first one, which is safety first. And just to mention that for us, our approach to safety is the following. We know that safety requirements are based on the risk. So this is the first thing. And also the societal acceptance. This was mentioned many times yesterday, today. Therefore, some of the requirements may seem higher than for today, for helicopter, for example, operations today. We think that same safety risks require the same safety levels. So it doesn't matter whether you fly for commercial purpose or for non-commercial purpose, since you fly in the city over people's heads. So you have to follow the same rules. We don't care if you're a business operator or a bank having purchased a lot of VTOLs for their own CEOs or managers, or you're offering this air taxi to people. And last but not least, we think that since the existing regulatory framework for air operations proved to be effective in terms of safety, we decided to use this framework to integrate certified category into this framework, not to create another one. We don't think this is necessary or this is appropriate to create a separate, to segregate the operation of IAM operations from the existing operations of helicopters or airplanes under Part CAT or NCC or NCO, etc. So this is to this is to visualize what Part-IAM would look like. On the right side, it is, as I said, this is a new type of operation, IAM Operations. So a new part, which happens to be Annex 9 to Regulation 965. It has similar features as other parts. So subpart Gen, subpart OP, which is operational procedures, subpart POL, which is performance and operating limitations, and subpart ID, which stands for instrument data and equipment. So we follow the same logic, basically. Then further on, this is split into modules. As you can see, we have module UAM, Urban Air Mobility, and module NAM, which is non-congested areas. So this depends on the context where the operation will take place. So what is the criteria for this is if at least one segment of your flight is in urban environment, you follow those rules. Of course, if you fly completely outside urban areas or completely outside congested areas, you may follow the rules of NAM, which may be one little level more flexible from the urban air mobility operational rules. And finally, each of the modules, except Gen and POL subparts, is broken into sections. And we have section VCA, which is for any VTOL capable aircraft. Section UVCA, which is for unmanned VTOL capable aircraft. And section DVCA, which is for cargo deliveries in the city, also unmanned. So this completes my presentation. Thank you for listening carefully.
Thank you, Irina, for giving us this overview of the future regulation that you will be able to appreciate soon when we will publish the MPA for public consultation. So I think we can start the discussion, the panel discussion. Before diving into the questions, just a reminder for you, if you would like to ask questions to the panelists, go to Slido, use hashtag 894527 to push forward your question to us. Before we dive into the questions that we will keep receiving on Slido, I would like to ask Thierry, when we're looking at UAS or VTOL, helicopters, and how these aircraft will be authorized in flying in congested areas or over congested areas, what are the differences in the way the ground risk is mitigated?
Yes, so of course we spoke a lot about the ground risk when we were discussing the drones, the UAS. As a matter of fact, the VTOL we are considering now, if we talk about passenger carrying VTOL over congested, as it was presented before in my slides, they have to meet the special condition VTOL, so which means that the scenario where there could be a possibility to lose the aircraft, so in order to protect the passenger on board, they have all to be mitigated so that the level of safety that is expected, which is similar to commercial air transport, is reached. So the vehicle will be at a level of safety that would be sufficiently high to protect the person on ground, because there should be no loss of control, in a sense, of those aircraft authorized in order by design. If we consider as well the residual risk, where you could have an emergency landing, which will not cause any injuries on board, but this should be controlled, and that's the operational rules are there to make sure that this emergency control landing, will be controlled in such a manner that this will not endanger the life of the person on ground. So this is the framework for eVTOL. For UAS, actually the same protection level is expected for the people on ground. The only difference is that for UAS, you don't have passengers on board by definition. So there will be other way to mitigate the ground risk that can be used, and this is not gonna talk more about the SORA. I guess you got some inputs during those workshops to, and you could see all the different mitigation means that could be put forward. So this is in a nutshell the main difference regarding the way ground risk will be addressed in between eVTOL and UAS as we speak. Yes.
Thank you. Maybe a question for Giancarlo. We know that we will soon have new actors flying VTOL aircraft, manned VTOL aircraft, so still a pilot on board. And we'd like to understand, is there any... we also know that in parallel there is a new regulation defining U-space, airspace, and all the set of services that certain aircraft will have to have in order to access this airspace. Is there any appetite to use this airspace, and what you see as a criticality or benefit when manned VTOL will may or may not have access to U-space?
So as I mentioned before, I think we should be looking at integration. There are clearly benefits for everybody, for the business, but also it will be impossible to keep things separate as the amount of traffic will increase. We will run very soon out of airspace for what we need. That's what we experienced in the past, and that's what's going to happen if we don't look at integration. Now, in terms of integration, I think, once again, if we think we can manage all this traffic in the same way we're managing today air traffic, we're going to lose. So we need to use the experience that we are making with unmanned airspace in terms of new way of managing traffic to bring what we are learning into the broader air traffic management system. This will make sure that we are using the latest technology, which is normally technology which is much less expensive and more scalable than what we have today, and we'll make sure that we can control all things that are flying in the same way. It will be a process, it won't last a day, we will need some time, but still, I think we shouldn't be losing sight of what we should be achieving. Also, we should be very aware of what the specific safety issues will be if we go in this direction. And one, which I didn't hear much talking about, but it's a concern for us, is, for example, the provision of meteorological information. Okay? Once you have something flying operated by a pilot, or even not operated by a pilot, but flying low level in a different environment, which is what we are flying today, you need to start thinking that we don't necessarily have a system that is able to provide the meteorological information that we need for this specific type of operations. So I think this is a very specific concern that we need also to think if we're going in the direction of integration and allowing VTOL aircraft to fly into urban airspace, which is very different from the rest.
The classical
because,
airspace.
I mean, if you go near my office in Brussels, as you get out of my office, there is a building where that completely changes the wind pattern, and it's only in that part of the city. In the rest of the city, you have certain wind. You walk to a IATA office, it's a different story, okay, just because of one single building. So these are things that needs to be taken into consideration if we want to move towards integration. Thanks.
Thank you, Giancarlo. A question to Rob now. Well, you represent the interest and of the commercial pilot of conventional aircraft somehow. Can you tell us how were the views or the concerns of the category that you represent here were considered during the regulatory development, and also what are the concerns of your category when facing this growing drone and air taxi industry?
Yeah, so it's the innovative aerial mobility industry, right? It's an industry that we've been looking at for a number of years. We know that they've been coming in. We consider ourselves to be the incumbent, and so we believe that we have we are the incumbent airspace user, and thereby we have a certain level of experience operating within this airspace. And we believe that with that experience, there is a right to share that experience with the new entrants into coming into the airspace. Now, what I tried to point out with my initial slides before is that as ECA, as a pilots association, we are not necessarily anti-drones, and we are not necessarily anti-air taxis. What we're trying to do is we're trying to ensure the safe integration of these new entrants into that airspace. And drones certainly are one area where we have to watch out because there are players in that space who are not necessarily informed so much about the regulations as we would like. However, within the certified category, we at least have the ability to influence what is happening within the regulation and how these entrants will be operating within that airspace. And that's where we hope to be involved. So we are not anti-new technologies. We are pro-integration of these new technologies in a safe and responsible manner.
Thank you. Irina, we've been talking about U-Space and U-Space services. What will be the approach for manned VTOL, so the first newcomer? Will they be allowed to enter U-Space, operate U-Space, or what are the conditions for them to operate in U-Space? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, initially they won't be allowed to enter the U-Space, basically. Okay, there were a lot of discussions this morning about the U-Space requirements. For the time being, manned VTOLs will have to follow VFR rules, and they won't be equipped with for operations for PBN operations. So basically, they will rely on their eyes, the pilots. And upon entering a new space, airspace, this space should not be this should be deactivated, basically. And the only requirement here is that the VTOL aircraft should be conspicuous to the others. So that's all we can require for the moment. A conspicuity for the VTOL, manned VTOL aircraft.
Good, thank you very much, Irina. Now I would like to go back again to Thierry, and we know that when it comes to design of these new machines, it's fundamental to reduce as much as possible weight in order to improve performances, but the objective was still maintaining a high level of safety. What is the view of the aircraft manufacturers when it comes to minimum flight instruments? So are you going to remove something, add something in order to grant the expected level of safety of the operations?
Well, this is a complex question to answer. I guess each manufacturer may have a different answer, but what we can see clearly is a path, I would say, in the engineering that is common to most of the platforms, is that they are using electrical propulsion. So we've not seen, I would say, fossil fuel engines on eVTOL too much. So, and because of that, when you look into optimizing your design and you want VTOL, so you need multiple rotors. Because to optimize with the current state of art of technology with batteries and electrical propulsion, you can only imagine a VTOL with multiple rotors. And now when it comes to I would say, and I have to go into this, we serve you a bit of engineering, but when we have these multiple rotors, you cannot really control them with mechanical linkage. This will make the aircraft far too heavy. So the only way forward would be fly-by-wire. And once you get to fly-by-wire, you have a beautiful aircraft with fly-by-wire computers in order to manage the controllability of the aircraft with multiple rotors. So you need to have this on board. And once you get there, you have the capability to assist the pilot to unprecedented level. So you will have the technology available to make flying very different than compared to a helicopter with mechanical linkage, for example. So, and with this, having in mind you've reached that state, you could imagine reducing some amount of minimum instruments on the cockpit that were traditionally used for aircraft flown with attitude, for example. And you could use translational rate commands, which will make more easy the flying, actually, and the possibility for the pilot to be flying, actually, this kind of aircraft. I'm not speaking as a pilot. I will hand over to Rob for more questions on that. But consequently, to conclude on that, I would say, we have used in the ops rule a kind of performance-based requirements. We are not going to have the list of traditional instruments like in the good old days. We said you need to have the minimum flight instrument that makes the flight safe, and we hand over to certification, where this limited minimum flight instrument will be defined. And we are also working to help the industry with standardization on that. So there is some Eurocase standards that will give you some list of minimum instruments. So it's no longer in the ops regulation because we don't really need this kind of, I would say, specification today with the current technology. I hope this answered the question.
Maybe it's a good hook for Giancarlo and Rob, because I would like to hear your views on the proposals that we are discussing here.
I have a few comments, if I may.
Yes, please.
No, first I want to react to what you said before. You said, I think we have the right to share what we have learned. Basically, that's what the sense with regards to safety. I don't think you have the right. I think you have the duty.
The responsibility to bring across, I believe you mentioned the 100 years of experience in aviation.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, it's a responsibility to do it. I mean, it would be unwise not to do it, I think. With regards to what you said, I'd like to make the following comments. So we are talking about new technology. We always had new technology in aviation, okay? But new technology cannot come alone. It needs to come with different training, for example, for pilots, okay? We have fly-by-wire systems, nothing new, but I can tell you a story. I flew, when I was in the military, one of the first fly-by-wire airplane, the Tornado, okay? And we were having major problem at the beginning because pilots were not trained to fly fly-by-wire aircraft, and they were getting into something called pilot-induced oscillation, which is, it's the time between the reaction of the aircraft when you act on the flight controls on a traditional aircraft is much different from a fly-by-wire aircraft, especially if you're flying at those speeds, not maybe a low speed as we're talking here, right? And therefore, pilots had this impression that once they were doing something on the controls, the aircraft was not reacting. And they were giving the inverse, well, they were increasing the input, and then the airplane was reacting too much, and then they would give the reverse input, and then they would go into this type of oscillation where we even lost some airplanes. So as you introduce new technology, you need to think that the pilots that will go and fly these machines are still trained on basically aircraft that were designed in the 50s, that had nothing to do with these machines. So we need to change the training as well. And this is why I'm thinking about integration of the system. And then I am fully convinced that we need to be performance-based. There's no other way. And I appreciate the effort the EASA is making, but I'm also the chairman of the stakeholder advisory body of EASA. And very recently, we discussed the fact, I don't know whether there's anybody from the commission here. I hope not, but anyway, I'll say it.
Not far.
It's recorded in any case.
The legal services of the how I'm going to lose my job. So in Amsterdam, the legal services of the Commission do not necessarily agree on this concept. they are very, very careful with performance-based regulation because they want legal certainty. So you see, once again, we're trying to fit things that all make sense into a system which has not been thought or designed for this. And I'm not saying it's not possible to do it. It will be possible to do it, but we need to rethink the system as well while we introduce new technologies, new ways of operating, and new things. Sorry, been a bit long, but I hope
it's good.
Express my point of view.
Well, I think the initial discussion came on from the integration of instrumentation in the aircraft and how that's being removed because it's being largely replaced by fly-by-wire systems. I think from a pilot's experience, we are used to working with a certain cockpit layout and a certain flight control system or method of controlling an aircraft, which is, with these aircraft, completely changing. And I think from the European Cockpit Association's point of view, we are open to changing the layout of the cockpit and the instrumentation that is in there based on these new technologies where this fly-by-wire system is effectively assisting the pilot in maintaining the flight envelope of the aircraft. But again, it's an area where we have to build up experience. So we are open to these changes that are being suggested, but from the ECA side, we are not going to propose them for you. It is largely the manufacturers that will have to come to the regulators and propose something, and we as ECA would kind of like to look over top of that and kind of act as a moderator, a sanity check, so to speak.
Maybe we can just close this loop of discussion in terms of minimum flight instrument requirements, because there is a specific question on slide on that is asking the opinion about what do we have to do with flight data monitoring system. Do they become necessary now, considering that probably on the long term crew will not be on board, and do we need flight data monitoring system for acceptable level of safety? Irina or Thierry, what are your views on this?
Maybe the question needs to be more precise. Is that flight data monitoring for operations, or this is for, I would say, evaluation of incidents or flight data recording?
I think it's for management of real-time operation, I would
yeah,
yes.
Monitoring
yes.
means more
predictive safety management.
Yes, so so you imagine the aircraft would be able to broadcast the information or be downloaded on ground. So we already have this, I guess, on modern aircraft today. We have not waited for eVTOL to have flight data monitoring on our helicopters, for example. Although this is not required by the regulation, except for some of the offshore operators where or specific operation that are requested in the OPS regulation to perform such a flight data monitoring, particular monitoring of the parts that are critical, vibration, for example, on the rotors, or also monitoring of the engine. So this is technology we will use, I guess, continue to use, and if requested to maintain the level of safety, maybe this could become mandatory. I don't know.
Irina,
we have not discussed that yet, but
not yet. It's not mandatory. According to what we have considered so far, based on helicopter rules, which we have already available, and airplanes rules, which also we have available. So we were considering this as a basis. This was our baseline. And we decided not to require mandatorily FDM for VTOL, manned VTOL, because we are talking about aircraft of less than 3.175. So
from the regulatory perspective, considering the fact that the RMT has looked at that, the regulation side is one point of view, but coming from the engineering perspective, for these highly automated aircraft, highly digitized aircraft, certainly it's a lot easier to gather this type of data and perhaps transmit it if required. And so for the manufacturer side, there's no reason why they could not take advantage of that over top of the regulations.
Yes, please, Giancarlo.
now I appreciate the fact that the regulator has made a decision on this and that they think FDM is not necessary, but then we should ask ourselves, how are we going to manage predictive and proactive safety without that? Because normally this is based, safety management system that we have accepted as the way forward with regards to safety are based on data. And if you don't have FDM, you can only rely on reporting, basically. Okay?
Well, the issue here with the new entrants, of course, is that we don't have the data yet. So this is certainly something that would assist in building the data as quickly as possible.
You don't have the data. You are basing all your decision on reporting, but you are working in an environment where you don't necessarily have a reporting culture yet. This is something that it took us ages in the airlines to build. And even today, in some environment, it's not that easy to get people reporting these things. So we should think twice how we're going to build this database, this
very fair comment. You're coming back to the just culture concept in aviation, which doesn't yet exist within the unmanned aircraft community as such. It's not a technological limitation. It's a cultural thing of people and reporting of incidents.
Good. Let's try to switch subject now. I will pick up another question from Slido, and we discussed before the fact that we will not be using any longer this division between commercial and non-commercial operations. Irina, could you explain us which kind of operators would need now, with the new regulation, an AOC?
All operators that will carry out operations under Part-IAM will have to be certified according to the existing rules on AOC certification. So they will have to be to follow, if you're familiar with that, they will have to follow Part-ORON, which is the part that is devoted to operators' requirements. So by meeting those requirements, they will receive, if meeting those requirements, they will receive an AOC with a specification that will indicate what type of operation and where and under what limitations and so forth and so forth. So yeah, everybody basically under Part-IAM.
Under Part-IAM.
Yeah.
And maybe hooking on this, regarding the cargo operations, do they fall necessarily under the certified category, or they could be even performed under certain conditions under the specific category? What is the split between the two domains?
The risk is the split. Well, as I said previously, certain specific category, UAS, are covered by the SORA, so the SORA can manage the risk there. While for other operations in urban environment or carrying passengers or dangerous goods or other considerations, SORA is not applicable, cannot apply. It does not foresee mitigation for the risk. So basically, this type of operation will have to follow Part-IAM as it is. So they have to be certified, and they will no longer rely on authorizations. As far as I know, under specific category, they may need authorizations, specific approvals to operate here and there, to provide this and that service. While under Part-IAM, they need to be certified as operators.
Under certain conditions, they fall out of SORA, but if the SORA or the result of the SORA places the aircraft in a certain risk category, then I believe they are required to fall into the certified category as well.
Now, certified category speaks about the operation, not about the aircraft. So aircraft is one element. The certification of aircraft is one element of the certified category operation. The other element is the certification of the operator, and the third element is the licensing of the pilot. All these three things should be present for you to be able to operate under Part-IAM.
Which brings us to another problem, which is, and I see some colleagues from oversight authorities of Europe here in the room, at least one that I know. Are they ready because we're going to certify the operators. We're going to have new licenses. Okay, the airplanes will be certified, the airplanes or whatever we want to call them, they'll be certified by EASA. But the national aviation authorities will need to do something new, which is to certify new type of operators, certify new type of operations, certify new type of pilots. Are they all ready? I'm sure you are, but are we sure that, 28 plus 3 countries in Europe are ready for that? Considering the constraints that they have in terms of resources, I would doubt it. So I think that's another area where we need to work and we need to be very aware.
But this is our job. This is why we are preparing rules so that member states are able to follow them, to refer to them.
Yeah, but it's something new, and we don't necessarily have in the system the resources and the expertise to keep up with the new rules.
Sure.
With the pace of the new rules, not with the pace.
With the pace of the new rules.
With the pace of the new rules, yes. Good. That's of course it's something very important that will be step 2 after we release the thing. But we need to think up front how to ease this process for the NAA. Looking at the broader spectrum of the whole landscape of urban air mobility, we know that vertiport infrastructure, they play quite a fundamental role. And we know that there are certain requirements that in the ops regulation, so in the future Part-IAM will have an impact in defining alternates and route alternates or destination alternates. How let's say the scarcity of infrastructure was considered in drafting the regulation, because we know that as of day 1 we will not have hundreds of vertiports everywhere in Europe, but maybe we will have few vertiports here and there. Mm-hmm. How this issue was addressed when defining the operational limitations?
Well, we knew about that already when developing the rules on vertiports. I don't know all the answers. We are working on that. So, what I can say now is that unlike manned aviation, the traditional one, for VTOLs, if they want to fly, they have to prepare very well. Their pre-flight planning must be perfect. And they need to select a number of alternate vertiports to be able to use them in case they need to divert or if another type of emergency occurs. And this was already then considered problematic from an infrastructure point of view. And also we were approached by manufacturers saying, look, we are building new infrastructure here and there, and of course we may not have hundreds of vertiports in a city which can serve as alternates. So what we can do to alleviate this requirement. And we were discussing a lot about that, and this all depends, of course, on fuel energy scheme, which they will adopt and approve, get approval from the authority, and this also depends on the duration of the flight. So on short routes, you might not need to have all the required alternate vertiports. You may use the departure alternate, you may use an en route alternate as a destination alternate. There are plenty of opportunities, but they all depend on the safety requirements. So we are not very rigid about that. The only thing the operator needs to make sure is that the energy, the in-flight fuel energy management will be effective.
So, if I may, from the ECA side, we did have an opinion on this from the initial stages, and we would like to take the analogy of existing regulation and try to apply it to these incoming aircraft in as much as possible. So the analogy for us, of course, is helicopters and helicopter operations over particular routes. Now we are open to new vertiports being placed en route in different locations, which could be used as alternate landing areas or even emergency landing areas, where I think the term that's important within EASA is the distinction between continuous safe flight and landing. That is, the aircraft is impaired in some manner, but can still be flown and make a landing. And as ECA, we would expect the requirement for an actual emergency to still be that if there is an emergency, you can land there where it is required.
Good. We are approaching slowly the conclusion of our discussion, but before we finish up our time, I would like to come back to one of the main subjects or main topics that we have heard quite frequently over the last couple of days. It's about fostering societal acceptance. How do you see the role of emergency medical services and towards this objective, and what are the provisions that we have been putting in place in the regulation? Maybe all of you can offer your perspective or your views on this topic, starting from the manufacturer side and how important the role of emergency medical system services.
Indeed, we fully support the idea to have from day one the possibility to use those eVTOL for this kind of mission. And I think Irina can only confirm that we will have what we call VEMS, which is VTOL Emergency Medical Services, in the provisions of the rules to come in the first publication. So this is something in order to foster the public acceptance. We would like ideally to see those kind of mission to start with, in order to, this will enable to demonstrate that we can safely operate for such mission eVTOL with the operating framework we have foreseen. So definitely, and we'll make all the necessary features available on the vehicle to make that happen. There may not be the same missions as we have today conducted with helicopters, however, because of the size. So you may not be able to put a stretcher and a technical crew member, what we call this like that in the helicopter of HEMS, on all eVTOL to start with. But they can be used to bring medicine or a doctor. That could be quite possible from day one. Thanks. Maybe you can complement.
For once, we don't have a strong opinion on this, but I would say that if we look at management of change in general, people will only accept change if they see there's a benefit for them. So we should demonstrate that there are benefits for the general public, and this is one way. On the other hand, I think that the sector, the HEMS sector, can provide a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise. I would love one day to see, an experienced instructor from an HMS service provider to maybe sit in a classroom with new pilots of a VTOL aircraft and explain to them the specificities and the problems of flying in an urban environment in certain conditions. That would be great in terms of passing the experience that we have learned.
Thank you. Irina?
Well, about VEMS, or VTOL Emergency Medical Services, yes, we are working on it and hope that in May we will be able to publish our proposal. What I can say about VEMS is that it will closely follow what we already know about HEMS, a helicopter emergency medical service, but there will be specificities and some fine-tuning will come in future, of course, because in the beginning we may not be able to have answers to any problem there. As Thierry said, there won't be a patient on board. There will be only a pilot and possibly a doctor who will be brought to the scene to provide first aid. So this is specific, and also we are thinking about training of the medical doctor who will play the role of a technical crew member, providing a second pair of eyes to the pilot, as it's not different from what we already have in HEMS, but here we may need more flexibility in addressing this. Yeah, and I hope, and I have here, I need to thank a specific operator who is helping us developing these rules because they are really very familiar with the problems of this operation.
Rob?
Yeah, so from the ECA side, we do have members who are HEMS pilots. Certainly, HEMS is likely to be the easiest use case to sell to the public for an initial and trial operations. And we do know that with EASA, there is a partnership with ADAC in Germany to work in this sector. And I'll digress in the last few seconds to answer two questions that were on Slido because they're very easy to answer. The first question was, when will the first aircraft be certified? That's already being looked at. It will be 2024, the Paris Olympics is what they're aiming for. And the second question was with regards to long-range fixed-wing aircraft. This is something that this RMT working group is looking at as well. However, the timeline for EASA has shifted so that we are focusing on VTOL aircraft because this is where the manufacturers have the demand at the moment. Then later NPAs will focus on other use cases, and then we're talking about Type 1 operations, which is long-range international IFR for remotely or unpiloted aircraft. This we're kind of looking at 2030, 2035, and we're looking at some of the discussions of the manufacturers are large aircraft. They're talking about 100-ton class manufacturers. So this is coming in the future, and I don't think many people are aware that it's this close on the horizon as it is.
Thank you, Rob. So fortunately, our time is over, and before I hand over the control of the mission to the remote piloting command, as I'm only the first officer, I'm not allowed to perform the landing. So I will, I'll just a reminder for you that all the questions that you have put on Slido will be addressed and will not answered today during the discussion, during the panel, will be answered separately by us. So you will be able to download them from the event, from the page on our website of the event. And Sascha, I hand it over back to you. You are in control.
He doesn't want to take over.
Now we have a problem.
Now we have a problem. You see, the problem of technology. Can somebody communicate? So we need a remote control. Where? Exactly.
Thank you, my dear co-pilot. I have control again.
Good.
Can you just maybe indicate and confirm that I can be heard?
Good. Yes, we can hear you. Yes, loud and clear. Go ahead. Can you type? Yes.
Okay, I get the confirmation now on my screen with a bit of delay, probably due to data transmission rates here. Let me offer a quick takeaway. Interesting discussions I have been monitoring from the background, obviously. Thierry alluded to the possibilities of flight data monitoring and the possibilities that fly-by-wire offers now, and that in fact fly-by-wire is an enabler to this contemporary UAM technology. However, then Giancarlo cautions that on fly-by-wire, based on his own personal experience from the military, people need specific training. There are limitations, pilot-induced oscillation, etc., and new hazards coming along with new technologies that need to be identified in an operational context and be mitigated timely. A discussion alluded on the need of predictive SMS. Giancarlo offered that predictive SMS is something that is needed. We have 100 years of aviation experience, and Rob said actually the conventional aviators have a possibility, not only a possibility, but probably also a responsibility to actively share with the new entrants that collective operational experience and transform it into something positive for the new operators, so that we foster a cultural environment that also stimulates a positive reporting culture, amongst other things. We need to certainly take stock. That's what Rob says. As an ECA representative, we should take stock of existing regulations to the extent that is possible. A bit conversely to what Giancarlo had argued, that maybe, yes, this might be an area where performance-based regulations are really needed, but there are some limitations, and Giancarlo outlined that they may come from a legal perspective rather than from an operational one, and that may be a stumblestone. Interesting point. Irina clarified that SORA does not apply to the certified category. So here, this is a clear cut. We are outside of that. All operators, however, need to be certified, and that is an air operator certificate. And this new concept of Part-IAM does not distinct between commercial or non-commercial operations, simply because the reason is that the risk of the operation is the paramount determinator, and the risk is the same for the ground risk, for example, is to be considered the same in an urban environment, regardless of the commercial or non-commercial nature of operations. And there was an interesting discussion with the proposal that we should probably try to learn from the operational experiences of HAMS operators. Now, much of that, to me, boils down to what can be titled a safety culture. And the question is, how do we instill, right from the start, a positive safety culture, a working safety culture, into a whole lot of brand new operators that may come to the market with literally no previous operational experience? That, to me, is the main message, the main takeaway, also from a safety perspective. There is much sense in it. It's not the first time, but here it boiled down, it crystallized to me very clearly. We need to work on, together with that new breed of new air operators, to have, from the beginning, a positive safety culture instilled. So with this, and the view to the time is up for long already. I thank you very much, dear panelists, dear audience. There have been questions raised in Slido, as Giuseppe has mentioned. Thank you very much for coming forward with them, and thank you very much, dear panelists and distinct speakers. Thank you for having accepted EASA's invitation to be with us this late afternoon. I would like to call it a day now. Thank you very much, Giuseppe, my dear co-pilot. Job well done, and Natale as well, who had been looking at the Slido in the back, plus the many other people in the background. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye from Rösrath near to Cologne.
Bye, Sascha, and thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening and a safe trip back home. See you next year for the next event.